Hey everyone, it's Nick.
This is Jack.
And from the Cloud Elements team. Thanks for joining us today. Please subscribe to the channel and like the video and leave a comment down below.
The goal of the video will be to walk through setting up Azure DevOps pipeline to automate the Let's Encrypt certificate auto renewal. We have a blog for this process as well on our site. The link will be available in the description. All yours, Nick.
Thanks, Jack. All right, so we'll start off at our blog post. So we'll just follow the guide here. We'll just provide a little bit more description in the video, but we'll try and follow this as close as we can. So a few prerequisites here. Like Jack was mentioning, this video is going to be about auto renewal. So one of the prerequisites to make this a little bit easier, we have another video that we set up Azure Front Door with an application running behind it, and we use Let's Encrypt to set up the TLS. So if you want to go through that video, it'll help provide some context, and this video is meant to kind of build off that guide that we put out before. So we'll just go through the prerequisites here. So make sure you have an Azure DevOps project, a custom domain, an application running under the domain so we can test it, access to a certificate in the key vault. So as mentioned, if you go through that previous guide, we go through creating a certificate with certbot and Let's Encrypt, and we import it to a key vault to be used with Azure Front Door and the application. So let's get started. We'll head over to our Azure DevOps project where we'll import the GitHub repo. So let's grab the link for the GitHub repo and we'll import that. Perfect. Okay. So we'll just go refer back to the blog site and move on to the next step. So this is where we're going to replace some values. So we'll just go over, there's only three script files. So we'll just go over what each one's doing real quick before we replace these. So because we're going to be focusing on Azure for this tutorial, we're just going to be running the PowerShell scripts in the Azure folder that you find in the repo. So this is the section that we have to change here that's mentioned in the blog. Before we do that, we'll just go through really quick if you hadn't had a chance to look through it in detail. So script goes through, installs OpenSSL. We download certbot via the invoke web request PowerShell commandlet. Install that, and then this is where we actually run the renewal or the creation of the certificate. So after certbot's installed, we run very similar to the same command that you saw in the last video that we created, where you do it manually. So we still supply that manual flag, preferred challenge DNS, only this time, of course, because we're running it through a pipeline, can't have that user interaction. So we provide the email here, the domain that we want. We have the agree tos, so we don't have to worry about agreeing, and then the non-interactive, so we don't get prompted. To do the non-interactive with the manual and preferred challenge DNS method, certbot wants you to call a manual authentication hook. So this hook actually gets run right before certbot checks checks for the validation. So if you remember in our last guide and you go through it manually, it asks you to input a text record under your DNS zone to verify. The script essentially gets run right before that. And we'll go into the script itself and you'll see that it is actually adding the text record. And then obviously the cleanup hook after, sort of self-explanatory, just once it's done issuing the certificate, just runs a script to clean up anything you've done already. So let's jump into the authentication hook script. So not too much here going on. Like I said, based on if you followed the last video and you went through this, you just had to add the text record with the proper value. So this is all we're doing here, just adding it to the Azure DNS Zone. If you check out the certbot documentation, there's some variables that get gets passed to the script that's run as the authentication hook that it has access to. So we know which domain, the text record name, which is the Acme challenge, and the validation string that certbot's going to be looking for. So when that happens, and if you remember in the prompts from the last video, it also tells you to wait and check with the dig tool just so that the records can propagate. So that's why we have this little sleep function here for a couple minutes. This seems to work for the Azure side, so we haven't had too many problems, but you may have to increase that if it doesn't come back right away. So that's the part that gets run. So the cleanup script, pretty simple, just removes that record that we added. So after going through that, let's update the values in the script with the values we have in our environment. So looks like the cert file name, we'll have to check the key vault for that and see what we have running. So let's start with the key vault information. Key vault and cert. All right, let's grab the cert name. Grab the key vault name. And the Azure DNS resource group. All right, I think that looks good. Quick sanity check, Jack. You don't see anything, eh?
Looks good. I was just checking all the values in the portal as well.
Cool. All right. So now that we changed that file, we'll have to change just a couple of pipeline variables. Before we go and do that, I can actually just go over quickly the shell script that we created. So the service provider we have right now is just set up for GoDaddy. So if you look at the repo, we have those same files for GoDaddy. So similar to the last script, the renew cert just kind of install certbot, runs the command. So same one as before. So it's got the manual authentication hook script. So that's what this was showing here. So basically, because we're working with GoDaddy, slightly different. Instead of running the PowerShell commands to add the record to the Azure DNS Zone, we're actually calling the GoDaddy REST API to add the text record with curl. So the same steps, just slightly different syntax here. So you can see the same sleep timer and the text record call here. And same thing with the cleanup script, just removes the record after. Okay, so let's move on to the pipeline. Cloud Elements SPN. So you should have a service connection created in Azure DevOps to use that has the proper rights on the key vaults, as well as the DNS zone to perform the tasks that we went over from the scripts. So we'll just have to replace that with the service connection that you provided. Also, we'll have to make sure that a variable group exists to use with the password for the private key. So speaking of the private key, if you remember in the last video, we mentioned that Azure Front Door works with a PFX format. So the next step after we install certbot and request a certificate is to convert it to the PFX format. So we're going to use OpenSSL to convert the certificate, and we use a secret pipeline variable to pass in the private key password. This gets replaced as part of the token replacement task in the pipeline. Once the certificate has been converted, we run the command to import it into the specified Azure Key Vault using our supplied private key password. So let's continue replacing the variables in our pipeline. In our case, we're just going to need to grab our service connection that we created that has the necessary permissions on the Key Vault. We're also going to need to specify our variable group that contains the password for the private key. So if you remember earlier, this is the variable that's going to get replaced as part of that token replacement task. So as you know, Let's Encrypt certificates only last for 90 days. So we set the schedule for the pipeline to run about every 2 months for now. All right, push the changes up. So in the pipeline, we have the shell scripts for the GoDaddy tasks disabled. So if you need to run those, you can just enable that and disable the Azure tasks. Okay, let's go create our pipeline in Azure DevOps. All right, so it has our proper service connection, and it's using the certbot variables variable group. All right, let's let this guy run. All right, awesome. So looks like we got the cert and it uploaded to the key vault. So we can see the record now got removed as part of the cleanup script as well. And let's go check out our key vault. So you can see the current version, this is the one that we just uploaded. So in the last video, if you saw the configuration for the cert, we always had the latest version. This way, whenever you renew, it'll automatically use the one that's still active. So it looks like that's it for running the pipeline. So you can use this, schedule the pipeline to run as often as you need to create or renew your certificates. There's some other tools out there. What we were hoping to provide with our scripts was just something that you can import locally, just something quick that didn't take you too long to read through in case you're in a place where you can't really use third-party tools or libraries. This is all just kind of default Azure commands while you're dealing with Azure, and just a curl call for the REST API for the GoDaddy stuff. So something you can easily just import into your own project, modify, and run yourselves.
Thank you, Nick. That was a great walkthrough for the auto renewal of Let's Encrypt certificate through Azure DevOps pipeline. Whether you are working with Azure DNS Zone or another name service provider, all you need to do is to change the variables at the top of the appropriate script. In our service provider script, we are leveraging GoDaddy's developer API to add text record in the automation script. If your service provider has similar REST API, you can leverage the same script and only modify the REST API call. Thank you everyone for watching the video. Please subscribe to the channel and click on like and leave a comment down below.